If you're a contractor, workers' comp is probably one of the insurance policies you think about the least, right up until something goes wrong. And that's true whether you've got employees on payroll, you use subcontractors, or you're running some mix of both, which is how a lot of contractors actually operate. Most of the confusion starts with a simple question. Why do I need workers' comp at all? Here's how that usually comes up. You're bidding a job. The general contractor asks for your insurance. You send it over, then they come back and they say, we are also going to need your workers' comp. If you've got employees, of course, that makes sense. You already expect it. If you don't, or you mostly subcontract work out, it feels less obvious. What's actually happening is this. Workers' comp doesn't just cover injuries. It decides who's financially responsible when someone gets hurt on a job site. General contractors don't want that responsibility rolling uphill to them. So they require workers' comp from anyone working under them. So whether you have employees, subs, or both, workers' comp is often required simply because you're on the job. Now, if you do have employees, workers' comp usually isn't optional. And that's where the next frustration comes in. Cost, right? You hire a few people, payroll grows. Next thing you know, workers' comp is starting to feel expensive. And that doesn't mean something's broken. Workers' comp is priced largely on payroll and the type of work being done. Higher risk equals higher payroll, and that equals higher premium. That's not punishment, it's just how the system works. That's how it's priced. That's how the system prices exposure. The mistake contractors make isn't having workers' comp. It's not structuring it correctly as the business grows. That brings us to one of the most misunderstood parts of workers' comp, classification codes. This is where a little insurance nerdiness actually matters. Let's say you're a painting contractor. You've got painters in the field. They've got ladders, scaffolding. They're working at height. That's going to be a higher risk exposure. But you also might have an office manager or secretary or other office folks answering phones, scheduling jobs, handling paperwork. Those roles should not be in the same workers' comp classification as your field folks. They have completely different risk exposure. And it doesn't stop with office versus field. Even people working in the field can fall into different codes depending on what they're actually doing. Someone doing prep work on the ground has a different risk profile than someone spending most of the day on ladders or scaffolding. A supervisor has a different exposure than someone actively performing the work. Workers' comp is supposed to be priced risk based on activity, not job title. When payroll gets lumped into one high-risk code, premiums get dragged up unnecessarily. A lot of contractors overpay simply because payroll isn't broken out correctly. Getting classifications right doesn't reduce coverage. It just makes sure each dollar of payroll is rated for the risk it actually carries. Now, let's talk about subcontractors because this is where things get blurry, especially for contractors who also have employees. Using subs does not automatically insulate you from workers' comp exposure. Here's why. If a subcontractor gets hurt and they don't have their own workers' comp or their policy lapsed, that responsibility can roll back to you. It doesn't matter that they were paid as a 1099. It matters that they were uninsured when the injury happened. That's why certificates of insurance matter. and why they need to be current. One missing or expired certificate can turn someone else's injury into your claim. That's usually when the 1099 question comes up. Can't I just 1099 people and avoid workers' comp? Sometimes contractors truly are using independent subcontractors. Other times they're not, even if that's not intentional. It comes down to how the relationship actually works. Who sets the schedule? Who's providing the tools? Who controls how the work is done? If the answer is mostly you, that worker probably is not as independent as you think. Workers' comp classification isn't based on what you call someone. It's based on how the relationship functions in real life. And if that person gets hurt, the responsibility can still land on you. Another reason that comes up a lot, especially from contractors with crews, is about claims. If you have employees, you've probably wondered whether filing a workers' comp claim is going to come back and hurt you. Here's the situation. Someone gets hurt. It seems minor. You hesitate. You think about paying for it out of pocket to avoid a claim. And sometimes, quite frankly, that works. But sometimes it creates bigger problems. Workers' comp is designed to handle injuries. Small, medical-only claims often have little impact on your experience modification factor. Where things go wrong is when injuries aren't reported and then turn into something more serious later. At that point, you've lost control of the process. Using the policy correctly is usually safer than trying to work around it. Another issue contractors think about, especially when money's tight, is whether workers' comp is really necessary at all. Here's the reality. If someone gets hurt and you don't have workers' comp, they can sue you directly. Workers' comp normally blocks those lawsuits. Without it, medical bills, lost wages, and legal costs can fall on you personally. Skipping workers' comp might save money in the short term, but when it goes wrong, oh boy, it goes wrong in a big way. And audits are another source of frustration. You pay an estimated workers' comp premium at the start of the year. Then the audit happens and the number changes. That's because workers' comp starts with an estimated payroll. At an audit, the carrier compares what you estimated with what actually happened. If payroll was higher, you owe more. If payroll was lower, you might get money back. Audits are not penalties. They're actually reconciliations. The contractors who struggle most with audits are usually the ones guessing instead of tracking payroll as the year goes on. Owners also ask about excluding themselves. You might want workers' comp for your employees or subs, but not for yourself. Whether that's allowed depends on the state and how your business is set up. Some states allow owner exclusions. Others require owners to be covered. This is one of those areas where getting it wrong quietly can cost you later. Before we wrap up, quick favor. If this is the kind of explanation that actually helps you understand how this stuff works, please hit the like button and subscribe. I put out videos like this regularly. Real insurance explained in hopefully plain language without hype or scare tactics. It helps the channel and it helps me know what topics actually are useful to you. All right, here's the big picture. Most contractors don't fit neatly into one box. They have employees, they use subcontractors, they shift roles depending on the job. Workers' comp doesn't care about neat boxes. It cares about who's exposed when someone gets hurt. When workers' comp is set up correctly, it protects your workers, your contracts, and your business. When it's set up poorly, it becomes a liability you don't see coming. If you're a contractor, those are the workers' comp questions contractors ask the most, and they're worth understanding. And if you ever want help reviewing workers' comp setups, reach out. The goal isn't more insurance, it's the right insurance. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.